The Bluetooth connected before I could stop it. Maya's voice filled my SUV like poison gas, whispering to someone who definitely wasn't me. Once he signs the house over, we're finally free, Bran. God, I can't wait to be done with this charade. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I pulled over so hard the tires screamed against the curb. My hands shook as I gripped the steering wheel, listening to my wife of 12 years plan my destruction with the precision of a surgical strike. Owen Kincaid, small-town real estate broker, officially designated sucker. The deed transfer meeting is Thursday, Maya continued, her voice dripping with satisfaction. I told him it's just for tax purposes. He's so trusting, it's almost pathetic. By Friday, we'll have everything. Brandon Keller's smug laugh crackled through the speakers. Your husband really has no clue? After all those yoga retreats and late nights at the office? Owen sees what he wants to see. Always has. He thinks I'm working late on case files when I'm actually planning our future. Without him. I sat there in my own car, listening to my wife dissect our marriage like a lab specimen. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd borrowed her Lexus because she'd forgotten her phone charger at home. Now I knew why she'd been so eager to let me take it. The conversation continued, each word hammering another nail into the coffin of everything I'd built. Our house, the Victorian I'd renovated myself, board by board, our business, the real estate agency I'd grown from nothing, our life, apparently just an elaborate setup for the world's most personal hostile takeover. What about his sister Sophie? Bran asked. She's a lawyer. Won't she smell something fishy about the deed transfer? Sophie's in Portland this week for that big corporate case. Besides, Owen handles his own paperwork. He's too proud to ask for help, especially from family. It's one of his most predictable flaws. Predictable flaws. That's what 12 years of marriage had taught her about me. I'd thought I was being independent and capable. Turns out I was just being easy to manipulate. And after Thursday? Bran's voice carried that particular brand of arrogance that made me want to introduce his face to a brick wall. We disappear. I've already transferred most of our joint savings to the account he doesn't know about. Once the house is in my name, I can sell it, and we'll have enough to start over somewhere warm. Maybe California. Somewhere Owen would never think to look. The call ended with kissing sounds that made my stomach turn. I sat in the sudden silence, watching normal people live their normal lives through my windshield. A jogger passed by, earbuds in, blissfully unaware that my entire existence had just imploded via automotive technology. My phone buzzed. A text from Maya. Working late again tonight. Don't wait up. Love you. Love you. Right. I drove home in a haze, my mind already shifting into a gear I hadn't used since my army days. Analysis, planning, strategic thinking. Maya had made one crucial error in her otherwise flawless scheme. She'd underestimated exactly how predictable I could choose to be. Our house looked the same as always. White clapboard siding, black shutters, the wraparound porch I'd built with my own hands. Maya's car wasn't in the driveway, naturally. She was probably at Bran's sterile glass condo, celebrating their upcoming victory. Inside, everything felt different. The family photos on the mantel looked like evidence of a crime. The kitchen table where we'd shared thousands of meals became a prop in an elaborate theater production. Even our bedroom felt like a museum exhibit. Marriage, American style, circa 2010-2023. I went to my office, the converted bedroom where I ran Kincaid Realty, and sat at my desk. The deed to our house lay in the filing cabinet, waiting for Thursday's meeting. Maya thought she was so clever, convincing me that transferring the property to her name would save us money on taxes. She'd even printed out fake articles about married couple property strategies to sell the lie. The really beautiful part was how she'd played to my ego. You're so much better at business than me, honey. I trust your judgment completely. Meanwhile, She'd been setting up her exit strategy for months, maybe years. My phone rang. Sophie, my sister, calling from Portland. Hey, Owen, just checking in. How's Maya handling the stress of the Morrison case? The Morrison case, Maya's big paralegal assignment that had been keeping her so busy, so unavailable, so distant. Funny thing about small towns, everybody knows everybody's business. Except, apparently, husbands don't always know their wives' business. She's managing, I said, testing the waters. Lots of late nights. That's weird. I had lunch with Janet Morrison yesterday. She said they wrapped up the case 2 weeks ago. Maya did great work, but it's been over for a while now. The last piece clicked into place. Maya hadn't been working late on legal documents. She'd been working late on destroying my life, and she'd been doing it with the thoroughness of a professional. Sophie, I said carefully, hypothetically speaking, if someone wanted to transfer a property deed quickly and quietly, how would they go about it? Hypothetically? They'd need the current owner to sign, preferably with a witness and notary. Why? Just curious about the process, for a client. Owen, you've been handling real estate transfers for 15 years. You know this stuff better than I do. She was right. I did know, which meant I also knew exactly how to stop it. After Sophie hung up, I sat in my office until well past midnight making lists. Maya thought she knew my predictable flaws, but she'd missed the most important one. When someone tries to take everything from me, I don't just fight back. I fight smart. Thursday's meeting was still 3 days away. That gave me 72 hours to turn the tables on the 2 people who thought they'd outsmarted Owen Kincaid. Time to show them what predictable really looked like. Tuesday morning arrived with the kind of crisp Maine autumn air that usually made me grateful to be alive. Today, it just felt like nature mocking my situation. I drove to my office early, before Tessa, my assistant, arrived. I needed time to think without interruption. Kincaid Realty occupied a converted Victorian on Elm Street, 3 blocks from the harbor. I'd bought the building 5 years ago when business was booming, back when I thought Maya and I were building something together. The irony of running a business based on trust while living with someone planning to steal everything from me wasn't lost on me. I unlocked my office and went straight to the filing cabinet. Maya's plan was elegant in its simplicity. Get me to sign the house over to her, then disappear with everything we'd built together. She'd been studying me like a lab rat, learning my patterns, exploiting my weaknesses. But Maya had made one critical error. She'd forgotten that I'd been in the real estate business long enough to know every trick in the book, including the ones that weren't in any book. My computer chimed with an email notification. Maya sent at 6:47 a.m. Good morning, honey. Another early day at the office. The Morrison case is finally wrapping up, but there are still loose ends to tie up. Might be late again tonight. You're the best for being so understanding. The Morrison case that had ended 2 weeks ago. Maya was getting sloppy, or maybe she just didn't care anymore. When you're planning to disappear, attention to detail becomes optional. Tessa arrived at 8:30 with coffee and her usual cheerful energy. Tessa Walsh, 26 years old, fresh out of business school, and sharp as a tack. Maya had always dismissed her as Owen's little helper, which was another mistake in a growing list. Morning, boss, Tessa said, setting a coffee on my desk. You look like you haven't slept. Rough night. Hey, Tessa, I need you to do something for me. Quietly. Her expression shifted to professional attention. What do you need? I want you to pull all the financial records for the business. Everything. Bank statements, tax filings, expense reports, going back 2 years. Looking for anything specific? Irregularities. Anything that doesn't add up. Tessa nodded and headed for her desk. Within an hour, she'd assembled a comprehensive financial picture of Kincaid Realty. We spread the documents across my conference table like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. Here's something interesting, Tessa said, pointing to a series of small withdrawals from the business account. These cash advances, all under $500. They started about 8 months ago. I studied the pattern. The withdrawals were always on days when Maya had access to the office, always small enough to avoid triggering bank notifications. Individually, they were insignificant. Together, they added up to nearly $8,000. "She's been skimming," I said. "Your wife?" Tessa's eyes widened. "Owen, are you sure?" I pulled out my phone and played the Bluetooth recording I'd made yesterday. Tessa listened in silence, her expression shifting from surprise to anger to something resembling admiration. "She's been planning this for months," Tessa said when the recording ended. "At least. Maybe longer. What are you going to do?" That was the question, wasn't it? The old Owen would have confronted Maya directly, demanded explanations, tried to save the marriage through honest communication. But the old Owen hadn't known he was married to a woman capable of this level of deception. The new Owen was going to be much more interesting. "First, we're going to secure everything she might try to take. Can you transfer the business accounts to the backup bank, the one Maya doesn't know about?" "Already working on it," Tessa said, fingers flying across her laptop keyboard. "What else?" "Change all the passwords, office security system, computer network, everything. And Tessa, this stays between us." "Understood." I spent the rest of the morning making phone calls. My accountant, my banker, my insurance agent. Boring, mundane conversations that would seem routine to anyone listening. But each call was another brick in the wall I was building around everything Maya thought she could take. At lunch, I drove to Frank's Lobster Shack, the local dive bar where half the town conducted their unofficial business. Frank Morrison, no relation to Maya's fictional case, had owned the place for 20 years and knew everyone's secrets. He was also one of my oldest friends. "Owen!" Frank called from behind the bar. "Usual spot?" I slid onto my regular stool. "Make it a double." Frank raised an eyebrow, but poured 2 fingers of bourbon without comment. That's what I liked about Frank. He understood that sometimes a man needed whiskey before he needed conversation. "Rough day?" Frank asked after I'd drained half the glass. "Getting rougher. Frank, you hear things in this place. People talk." "They do." "Anyone been talking about Maya?" Frank's expression shifted. In a small town, that question had weight. "Why do you ask?" "Because I think my wife is planning to leave me, and I'd like to know what everyone else knows before I decide what to do about it." Frank poured himself a drink which told me everything I needed to know. Frank only drank during his shift when the news was bad. "She's been in here," he said quietly, "with Brandon Keller. 3, maybe 4 times in the past month, always during the day, always at that corner booth where they think nobody can see them." "What kind of conversation?" "The kind where people lean close and talk quiet, the kind where they hold hands under the table." "I'm sorry, Owen." I finished my bourbon. "Don't be sorry. Be ready." "Ready for what?" "I'm not sure yet, but when I figure it out, I might need a friend." Frank nodded. "You've got one." I drove back to the office with my head clearer than it had been in months. Maya thought she was playing chess while I played checkers. Time to show her that I'd been playing a different game entirely. Tessa met me at the door with a folder thick with documents. "The financial transfers are complete," she said. "All business assets are now in accounts Maya can't access. I also found something else." She handed me a printed email. This was in Maya's deleted items folder on the office computer. She must have forgotten she was logged in here last week. The email was from Brandon Keller to Maya, dated 3 days ago. "Can't wait for Thursday. Booked us a flight to San Diego for Friday morning. First class, just like you deserve. Soon we'll be sipping margaritas while Owen figures out what hit him." I read it twice, memorizing every word. San Diego, first class, Friday morning. "Tessa," I said, "how do you feel about working late tonight?" "Whatever you need, boss." "Good. Because we're going to make sure Thursday is a day Maya and Brandon never forget." The game was about to begin, and I was finally ready to play. Wednesday morning, Maya actually came down for breakfast. She sat across from me at our kitchen table, sipping coffee and scrolling through her phone like she wasn't planning to destroy my life in 24 hours. "You're up early," she said without looking at me. "Couldn't sleep. Big day tomorrow." That got her attention. She glanced up with carefully neutral eyes. "Oh, what's tomorrow?" I almost laughed. Maya was good, but she wasn't that good. "The deed transfer, remember? You said it would save us money on taxes." Relief flickered across her face so quickly I almost missed it. "Right, of course. I'm glad you're taking care of that." "Anything for my wife." She smiled, and for just a moment I remembered why I'd fallen in love with her. Then I remembered the Bluetooth conversation, and the feeling passed. "I'll be late again tonight," Maya said, standing to rinse her mug. "This case is eliminating me, but we're almost done." The case that ended 2 weeks ago. "Don't work too hard." She kissed my cheek on her way out, and I caught a whiff of unfamiliar perfume. Something expensive and floral that I'd never bought for her. Brandon's taste, apparently. After Maya left, I called Sophie in Portland. "I need a favor," I said. "A big one." "What kind of favor?" "The kind where you drive up here tonight and help me catch Maya in a lie that could destroy both our lives." Silence on the other end. Then, "What's Maya done?" I told her everything. The Bluetooth conversation, the financial records, the email about San Diego. Sophie listened without interruption, her lawyer brain processing the information. "Jesus, Owen, how long has this been going on?" "Months, maybe longer. She's been playing the long game." "And you want to what? Exactly? Confront her?" "I want to document everything. I want proof that will stand up in court when she tries to claim I'm the one who destroyed our marriage." "Owen, be careful. If you're planning some kind of revenge, I'm planning to protect myself. There's a difference." Sophie sighed. "I'll be there by 6. But Owen, don't do anything stupid." "Too late for that. I already trusted my wife." I spent the morning at the office, going through the motions of normal business, while my brain worked on the evening's plan. Tessa had everything ready. Documents, recordings, even a backup plan in case Maya got suspicious. At noon, my phone buzzed with a text from Maya. "Lunch meeting ran long. Won't be home until late. Love you." Except Maya's car was parked outside Brandon Keller's condo complex, where it had been since 10 a.m. I knew because I'd driven by on my way to check a property listing. Amazing how much you could see when you actually looked. Brandon Keller lived in Harborview condos, a sterile glass monument to new money that stuck out like a sore thumb among the town's historic buildings. His unit was on the 3rd floor, with a view of the water and a rent that cost more than most people's mortgages. I'd done my homework on Brandon. 36 years old, worked as a tech consultant for various companies, no permanent address until he'd landed in our town 6 months ago. He drove a silver Audi, wore expensive clothes, and had the kind of confidence that came from never facing real consequences. That was about to change. At 3 p.m. I got another text from Maya. "Case is getting complicated. Definitely won't be home for dinner. Order something for yourself." I drove past Brandon's building again. Maya's car was still there, but now Brandon's Audi was gone. Interesting. Sophie arrived at 6 with a briefcase and a grim expression. "You look terrible," she said, hugging me in my driveway. "I feel worse. Come on, I'll show you what we're dealing with." We spread everything out on my dining room table. Financial records, email printouts, photos I'd taken of Maya's car at Brandon's building, even a timeline Tessa had created showing Maya's lies about working late. "This is thorough," Sophie said, reviewing the documents, almost obsessively thorough. "Maya's been planning this for months. I've had 3 days." "What's the end game here, Owen? What do you want to accomplish?" I looked around our dining room, at the built-in china cabinet I'd installed myself, the hardwood floors I'd refinished, the chandelier Maya had picked out for our 5th anniversary. Everything in this house represented years of work, compromise, and shared dreams. I want her to understand that actions have consequences, I said. I want Brandon to learn that some things aren't for sale, and I want everyone in this town to know exactly who Maya Kincaid really is. Sophie nodded slowly. Okay, but we do this right. No breaking laws, no doing anything that could backfire on you later. Agreed. At 8 p.m., Maya's car pulled into our driveway. Sophie and I were sitting in the living room, ostensibly watching TV, while actually reviewing our plan for tomorrow. Maya walked in looking slightly disheveled, her lipstick gone and her hair mussed. She froze when she saw Sophie. "Oh, Sophie, I didn't know you were coming up." "Last-minute trip," Sophie said smoothly. "Thought I'd surprise you both." "How nice." Maya's smile looked painted on. "I'm exhausted. Long day at the office." "The Morrison case?" I asked innocently. "Yes, exactly. So many details to wrap up." Sophie and I exchanged glances. Maya was either a pathological liar or she'd genuinely forgotten that Sophie knew the Morrison family personally. "Well," Maya said, "I'm going to take a shower and get to bed early. Big day tomorrow with the deed transfer." She kissed my forehead and headed upstairs. A few minutes later, we heard the shower running. "She's good," Sophie whispered. "She's had practice." We spent another hour finalizing our plan. Tomorrow's deed transfer meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. at my office. Maya thought she was walking into a routine paperwork signing. Instead, she was walking into a carefully orchestrated revelation that would change everything. Sophie was staying at a hotel in town, but before she left, she grabbed my arm. "Owen, I have to ask. Are you sure about this? Once we do this tomorrow, there's no going back." I thought about 12 years of marriage, about trust and betrayal, about the woman upstairs who was probably texting Brandon about how smoothly everything was going. "She made her choice months ago," I said. "Tomorrow, I make mine." After Sophie left, I sat in my office, looking at the deed that Maya thought would make her rich. Instead, it was going to make her understand exactly what kind of man she'd tried to fool. The house was quiet except for the sound of Maya's hairdryer upstairs. She was getting ready for bed, probably planning what she'd pack for San Diego, maybe even composing her goodbye note. But Maya had made one crucial error in her calculations. She'd assumed that Owen Kincaid would go quietly. She was about to learn how wrong she could be. Thursday morning arrived gray and drizzling, the kind of weather that made everything look like a noir film. Perfect atmosphere for what I had planned. Maya came downstairs dressed in her best professional outfit, navy blue suit, pearl earrings, hair pulled back in a severe bun. She looked like she was going to court, which in a way she was. "Ready for the big day?" she asked, pouring coffee into a travel mug. "More ready than you know." She kissed me goodbye, and I tasted lies on her lips. "See you at 10. This is going to change everything for us." She had no idea how right she was. At 9:30, I was in my office making final preparations. Tessa had everything set up, documents arranged on the conference table, recording equipment discreetly positioned, even fresh coffee brewing to maintain the illusion of a routine business meeting. Sophie arrived at 9:45, briefcase in hand and game face on. She looked every inch the successful Portland attorney, which was exactly what I needed. "You sure about this?" she asked one last time. Never been more sure of anything in my life. Maya arrived precisely at 10, which was unlike her. She was usually fashionably late to everything, but today, she was eager. She walked into my office with a smile that didn't reach her eyes and set her purse down like she owned the place, which, in about 5 minutes, she thought she would. "Good morning, Sophie," Maya said. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Owen asked me to review the paperwork," Sophie replied smoothly, "just to make sure everything's in order." A flicker of concern crossed Maya's face. I thought this was just a simple transfer. It is, I said. Please, sit down. Let's get started. Maya took her seat across from me at the conference table. She folded her hands and gave me her most sincere smile, the one she used when she wanted something. I really appreciate you doing this, Owen. I know tax law isn't the most exciting thing, but this will save us thousands. Actually, Sophie said, opening her briefcase, before we start with the deed transfer, I have some questions about your current financial situation. Questions? Maya's smile faltered slightly. Standard procedure, I said. Sophie needs to understand our complete financial picture before she can recommend the best tax strategy. Sophie pulled out a folder and opened it. Let's start with your employment income, Maya. You work at Henderson & Associates as a paralegal, correct? That's right. And you've been working on the Morrison case recently? Yes, it's been very demanding. Sophie nodded and made a note. Interesting, because I had lunch with Janet Morrison yesterday, and she mentioned that case wrapped up 2 weeks ago. The color drained from Maya's face. There were some follow-up issues. What kind of follow-up issues? Sophie pressed. Maya's eyes darted between Sophie and me. Administrative things? Filing? Documentation? That's strange, I said, pulling out my phone. Because according to your texts, you've been working late on active case research. I read from my screen. Case is getting complicated. Definitely won't be home for dinner. I looked up at Maya. You sent that yesterday at 3 p.m. Oh, and what is this? Why are you? Or this one from Tuesday. Another early day at the office. The Morrison case is finally wrapping up, but there are still loose ends to tie up. Maya stood up abruptly. I don't like what you're implying. Sit down, Maya. My voice carried a tone I'd never used with her before. We're not finished. She sat, but her hands were shaking now. Sophie pulled out another document. Let's talk about these cash withdrawals from the business account. $8,000 over 8 months, always in amounts under $500. I don't know anything about... Your signature is on every withdrawal slip, I said. Maya's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Owen, I can explain... Can you explain this? I pulled out my phone and played the Bluetooth recording. Maya's voice filled the room. Once he signs the house over, we're finally free, Bran. God, I can't wait to be done with this charade. Maya went completely white. She gripped the edge of the table like she might fall over. The recording continued. Your husband really has no clue? After all those yoga retreats and late nights at the office? Owen sees what he wants to see. Always has. I stopped the recording. The silence in the room was deafening. Anything to say? I asked. Maya's voice came out as a whisper. How long have you known? Since Monday. Amazing what you can learn when you start paying attention. She looked around the room like a trapped animal. Owen, please, let me explain. Explain what? How you've been stealing from our business. How you've been lying about where you spend your time. How you and Brandon have been planning to take everything and disappear to San Diego. Her eyes widened. You know about San Diego? Sophie pulled out a printed email. First-class tickets for Friday morning, booked under the names Maya Kincaid and Brandon Keller. Maya buried her face in her hands. Oh, God. The question now, I said, is what we do about it. She looked up with desperate hope. We can work this out. I made mistakes, but we can fix this. No, Maya, we can't. I stood up and walked to my filing cabinet. Instead of pulling out the deed to our house, I pulled out a different document. This is a divorce petition, I said, placing it on the table in front of her. Sophie filed it this morning. Maya stared at the document like it might bite her. You're divorcing me? You divorced me months ago. You just forgot to mention it. Owen, please. The house stays in my name. The business stays in my name. You can keep whatever's in your secret bank account. minus the 8,000 you stole from the company. You can't do this. Actually, Sophie said, he can. You've committed theft, adultery, and fraud. Owen is being remarkably generous. Maya turned to me with tears streaming down her face. 12 years, Owen. 12 years of marriage, and you're going to throw it all away? I didn't throw anything away. You did. The moment you decided I was worth more to you as a victim than as a husband. She stood up unsteadily. What about Brandon? What about him? What are you going to do? I smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. Brandon's going to learn that some toys don't belong to him. Maya grabbed her purse and headed for the door. She stopped with her hand on the handle. I loved you once, she said without turning around. I know, I replied. That's what makes this so sad. She left without another word. Through my office window, I watched her walk to her car like she was moving through quicksand. She sat in the driver's seat for a long time before starting the engine. Think she'll go straight to Brandon? Sophie asked. Absolutely, and when she does, she's going to discover that her problems are just beginning. Sophie raised an eyebrow. What did you do? Nothing illegal, nothing unethical. I just made sure that Brandon's employer knows about his side business of seducing married women and stealing their assets. Owen. His boss called this morning. Seems Brandon's been using company resources for personal projects. He's been terminated, effective immediately. Sophie shook her head. You've been busy. I'm not done yet. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You bastard. You ruined everything. I showed the message to Sophie. Brandon, I assume. Another text. This isn't over. I replied, yes it is. Check your bank account. My phone rang immediately. Brandon's voice was shaking with rage. What did you do? I called your credit card companies. Explained that someone had been using your information to make fraudulent purchases. They've frozen everything pending investigation. You can't do that. Actually, I can, especially when I have documentation showing that you've been using stolen money to finance your lifestyle. The line went quiet. Then, I'll destroy you. With what? You're unemployed, broke, and about to be evicted. Maya's divorcing me, which means she won't have access to any money to support you. Face it, Brandon. You bet everything on the wrong horse. He hung up. Sophie was staring at me. I've never seen this side of you before. Neither had Maya. That was her mistake. I walked to my window and looked out at the town I'd called home for 15 years. In a few hours, everyone would know that Maya Kincaid had tried to steal everything from her husband and failed spectacularly. In a small town, that kind of news traveled fast. What now? Sophie asked. Now we wait. Maya and Brandon are about to discover what happens when you try to con a man who spent 15 years learning how to read people. My phone buzzed with another text, this time from Maya. Please don't do this. We can work it out. I deleted the message without responding. Maya had made her choice months ago. Now she got to live with the consequences. The game was almost over, and I was finally winning. By Friday morning, the whole town knew. That's how small towns work. Secrets have a half-life of about 12 hours before they become public knowledge. I was having coffee at Frank's when Doris Henderson, Maya's boss, walked in looking like she'd aged 10 years overnight. Owen, she said, sliding onto the stool next to mine, I owe you an apology. For what? For not seeing what was happening under my own roof. Maya. I had no idea she was capable of something like this. Frank poured Doris a coffee without being asked. Maya's not coming back to work, I take it. I had to let her go yesterday afternoon. The lies about the Morrison case, the theft from your business account. I can't have that kind of person representing my firm. I nodded. I understand. The whole town's talking about it, Doris continued. Some people are saying you were too harsh, but most folks think Maya got what she deserved. What do you think? Doris considered this. I think you're a better man than I would have been in your situation. After Doris left, Frank leaned across the bar. You know Brandon's been trying to get people to loan him money? Having cash flow problems? Seems his credit cards were mysteriously canceled. His landlord's threatening eviction. Word is he's been sleeping in his car. I felt a momentary pang of something that might have been sympathy. Then I remembered the recording of him laughing about my stupidity, and the feeling passed. What about Maya? She's staying with her sister in Bangor. Leah from the law office drove up there yesterday with a suitcase. So Maya had run home to family. I wondered if she'd told them the truth about why her marriage had imploded, or if she'd crafted some story that made her the victim. My phone rang. Sophie, calling from Portland. How are you holding up? She asked. Better than expected. The town's been supportive. Good. Listen, I have news about the divorce proceedings. Maya's hired a lawyer. Anyone I know? Richard Blackwood from Augusta. He's expensive and aggressive. I laughed. With what money? Maya's broke, and I doubt Brandon's in any position to finance a legal battle. That's what I thought too. But Owen, Blackwood doesn't take cases unless he's sure he'll get paid. Maya must have some resources we don't know about. That was concerning. I'd been thorough in documenting Maya's financial situation, but maybe I'd missed something. Keep me posted, I said. And Sophie, thanks for everything. That's what family is for. I spent the morning at the office, trying to focus on actual real estate business. Tessa had fielded dozens of calls from people wanting to know if the rumors were true, if I was okay, if there was anything they could do to help. Mrs. Patterson wants to know if you need casseroles, Tessa said, hanging up the phone. Apparently, divorce requires the same community response as a loss in the family. Tell her thanks, but I'm managing. And Tom Bradley called about listing his house, said he wants to work with someone he can trust. That was the silver lining in this whole mess. Maya's betrayal had actually enhanced my reputation in town. People respected the fact that I'd handled the situation with dignity rather than violence. At noon, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Meet me at the harbor. We need to talk. M. Maya wanted to meet. Part of me was curious about what she could possibly have to say. Another part of me knew that engaging with her was probably a mistake. I texted back, nothing to discuss. Talk to your lawyer. The response came immediately. Please, 5 minutes. I have information you need to know about Brandon. That got my attention. What could Maya possibly know about Brandon that would matter to me now? Against my better judgment, I drove to the harbor. Maya was sitting on a bench overlooking the water, wearing jeans and a sweater I'd bought her for Christmas 2 years ago. She looked smaller than I remembered, diminished somehow. Thank you for coming, she said without looking at me. I sat on the opposite end of the bench. You have 5 minutes. Brandon's planning something to hurt you. Brandon's broke and unemployed. What could he possibly do? Maya turned to face me, and I saw genuine fear in her eyes. He's not broke. He has money hidden that I didn't know about. A lot of money. From where? I don't know. But Owen, he's furious about what you did to him. He's talking about revenge. What kind of revenge? He mentioned your business, your reputation. He thinks he can destroy you the way you destroyed him. I studied Maya's face, looking for tells. She was scared. That much was genuine. But was she scared for me, or scared of what Brandon might do to her if his plans failed? Why are you warning me? I asked. Because despite everything, I don't want to see you hurt. You already hurt me. In the worst possible way. Tears started down her cheeks. I know what I did was unforgivable. But Owen, I never wanted it to end like this. How did you want it to end? I thought you'd be okay. I thought you'd move on, find someone better. Someone better than my wife of 12 years? Someone who wouldn't steal from me and plan to disappear with everything I'd worked for? Maya flinched like I'd slapped her. I was unhappy. I felt trapped. I made terrible choices. You made calculated choices. There's a difference. We sat in silence for a moment, watching fishing boats come and go in the harbor. This was where I'd proposed to Maya 13 years ago, on a warm summer evening when everything seemed possible. "What does Brandon have planned?" I asked. "I'm not sure exactly, but he's been making phone calls, asking questions about your business practices, your client relationships. He thinks he can find something to use against you." "There's nothing to find." "I know that, but Brandon doesn't care about the truth. He just wants to hurt you." My phone rang. Tessa, sounding panicked. "Owen, you need to get back here. There's a man in the office asking questions about you. He says he's from the state licensing board." I stood up. "I have to go." "Owen, wait. We're done, Maya. Whatever Brandon's planning, I'll handle it. But you and we're finished." I left her sitting on the bench and drove back to my office with my mind racing. If Brandon was trying to get my real estate license revoked, he was playing with fire, but he was also playing a game I knew better than he did. Time to remind Brandon Keller that he wasn't the only one who could fight dirty. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. The man from the state licensing board turned out to be a fraud. His credentials were fake, his questions were fishing expeditions, and his real purpose was to gather information that Brandon could use against me later. I knew this because I'd called the actual licensing board while the fake inspector was still in my office, and they'd confirmed that no investigation was underway. "Sir," I said to the imposter, "I'm going to need you to leave now." He tried to bluster his way through it, claiming he had authority to inspect my records, but when I mentioned calling the police, he left quickly. Tessa was shaken. "Who was that really?" "Someone Brandon hired to dig up dirt on me. The question is, where did he get the money to pay for it?" I called Sophie and explained what had happened. "This is escalating," she said. "You need to be careful. If Brandon's desperate enough to hire fake investigators, there's no telling what else he might try. I'm not hiding from Brandon Keller. I'm not asking you to hide. I'm asking you to be smart." That evening, I was at home reviewing security footage from my office cameras when my doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw a police car in my driveway. Detective Ray Malone stood on my porch, looking uncomfortable. "Evening, Owen? Mind if I come in?" "Of course. What's this about?" Malone followed me into the living room. He was a decent cop and a fair man, but he had the expression of someone delivering bad news. "I got a complaint today," he said. "Someone claims you've been harassing them, making threats, interfering with their business relationships." Brandon Keller. You know why he'd say that? I told Malone the whole story, the affair, the theft, the planned con, everything. He listened without interruption, taking notes. "You have proof of all this?" he asked when I finished. I played him the Bluetooth recording and showed him the financial documents. Malone studied everything carefully. "This is a civil matter," he said finally. "Brandon's complaint doesn't hold water. But Owen, I have to ask, are you planning any kind of retaliation?" "I've already retaliated. I divorced my wife and exposed their scheme. That's enough." Malone nodded. "Good. Because Brandon Keller strikes me as the kind of man who might do something stupid if he feels cornered." After Malone left, I sat in my living room thinking about Maya's warning at the harbor. She'd been genuinely scared, which meant Brandon was planning something bigger than fake investigators and false police reports. My phone rang. Frank calling from the bar. "Owen, you need to know something. Brandon's been in here tonight, drinking heavy and talking loud. He's telling anyone who'll listen that you framed him, that you're the real criminal." "Anyone buying it?" "Not really. But Owen, he's drunk and angry and making threats. Said something about teaching you a lesson you won't forget." "What kind of lesson?" "He didn't say exactly, but he kept talking about your house, about how you think you're so smart. I think he might be planning to do something to your property." I thanked Frank and hung up. Then I called the security company and upgraded my home system to include motion sensors and cameras covering every angle of the property. If Brandon wanted to play games with my house, he was welcome to try. Saturday morning, I was having coffee in my kitchen when the motion sensors triggered. Through my security app, I watched Brandon Keller creep around the side of my house, carrying what looked like a gas can. I called 911 and then grabbed the baseball bat I kept by the back door. Brandon was trying to pour gasoline on my deck when I stepped outside. "Morning, Brandon," I said conversationally. "Nice day for arson." He spun around, nearly dropping the gas can. His eyes were bloodshot and wild, and he smelled like he'd been drinking since yesterday. "You destroyed my life," he slurred. "You destroyed your own life. I just documented it. I had everything planned. Maya and I were going to be happy. Maya and you were going to be thieves. There's a difference." Brandon raised the gas can like he might throw it at me. "I should burn this whole place down with you in it." "You should, but you won't. Because you're not actually dangerous, Brandon. You're just pathetic." Sirens wailed in the distance. Brandon heard them too, and panic flickered across his face. "They're coming for you," I said. "You can run, or you can stand there and face the consequences of your choices. Up to you." He dropped the gas can and bolted for the tree line behind my house. I didn't chase him. There was no point. The police would find him soon enough, and when they did, he'd be facing charges that would put him away for a long time. Detective Malone arrived with 2 patrol cars and a K9 unit. They found Brandon hiding in the woods 20 minutes later, still reeking of gasoline and incoherent with rage and alcohol. "Attempted arson," Malone said as they loaded Brandon into the patrol car, plus the fake inspector scam, filing false police reports and harassment. He's looking at serious time. I watched the police cars drive away with Brandon in custody. Through the rear window, I could see him staring back at my house with pure hatred. That afternoon, Maya called. "I heard about Brandon," she said. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. Your boyfriend's going to prison." "He's not my boyfriend anymore. I ended it yesterday when I found out about the money." "What money?" "The money he's been hiding. Owen, he's been running cons like this for years. I wasn't his first victim, just his latest." That explained how Brandon had afforded the fake investigator and his expensive lifestyle. He was a professional grifter, and Maya had been just another mark. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I want you to know that I never knew. If I'd realized what he really was, I never would have what? Stolen from me? Lied to me? Planned to destroy everything we'd built together? I made terrible mistakes. But Owen, I loved you. I really did. No, Maya. You loved the idea of me. You loved what I could provide, but you never loved me enough to be honest with me." She was crying now. "Is there any chance? Could we ever—" "No," I said firmly. "We're done. We were done the moment you chose Brandon over our marriage." I hung up and blocked her number. Sunday morning, I was sitting on my deck drinking coffee when Sophie arrived with bagels and the Sunday paper. "You made the front page," she said, spreading the paper on my table. The headline read, "Local Man Foils Real Estate Scam." The article told the whole story: Maya's affair, the planned theft, Brandon's arrest for attempted arson. "How do you feel about being famous?" Sophie asked. "Like I want this to be over." "It is over. Brandon's in jail, Maya's moved back to Bangor, and you're free to start over." I looked around my property, the house I'd renovated, the deck I'd built, the gardens Maya had never cared about. Everything was exactly as I'd left it, but somehow it felt different. Cleaner, maybe, like a weight had been lifted. "You know what the funny thing is?" I said. Maya was right about one thing. I did see what I wanted to see. I wanted to believe that our marriage was real, so I ignored all the signs that it wasn't. That doesn't make you stupid, Owen. It makes you human. Maybe, but I'll never make that mistake again. Sophie squeezed my hand. Good. You deserve better than Maya Kincaid. That afternoon, I drove to the harbor and sat on the bench where Maya had warned me about Brandon. The water was calm, the sky was clear, and for the first time in months, I felt at peace. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Mr. Kincaid, this is Janet Morrison. I heard about what happened with Maya. I wanted you to know that everyone in town respects how you handled this situation. If you ever need anything, please don't hesitate to ask." Over the next hour, I received similar messages from dozens of people. Clients, neighbors, friends I hadn't heard from in years. All of them offering support. All of them expressing admiration for how I dealt with betrayal. Maya had tried to destroy me, but instead, she'd shown the whole town what kind of man I really was. In trying to take everything from me, she'd given me something more valuable than money or property. She'd given me back my reputation and my self-respect. As the sun set over the harbor, I realized that Maya and Brandon had actually done me a favor. They'd shown me that I was stronger than I'd ever imagined, smarter than they'd assumed, and more resilient than anyone had expected. Owen Kincaid wasn't the victim in this story after all. He was the hero,